I'll never forget that Wednesday morning in 1983. The house smelled faintly of coffee, the kind Maggie used to brew strong because she said weak coffee made her feel like she was living a weak life. The sunlight had just started pouring through the curtains, and I thought it was going to be an ordinary day. Instead, it was the morning my world fell apart. I was 43 years old, married for 28 years to the woman I thought I knew better than myself. But that morning, Maggie walked into the kitchen holding her suitcase. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She looked finished. "Tom," she said, her voice flat, "I can't do this anymore." I blinked at her, confused. "Can't do what? We've been fine." My words sounded pathetic even to me, like I was begging for something I hadn't even lost yet. She tightened her grip on the handle of the suitcase. "You never became the man I imagined. You gave me a roof, yes. You worked yourself to the bone for my dreams, but you never gave me you." I remember the way her eyes lingered on me, like she was staring at a stranger. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw every word of sacrifice in her face. The graveyard shifts, the calluses on my hands, the birthdays I missed, the nights I came home too exhausted to eat just so she could have the house she wanted, the car she loved, the vacations she bragged about to her friends. But the words died in my throat. She walked out the front door without looking back. The sound of the latch clicking was louder than thunder. That was the day Maggie left me. That was the day my life split in two. And for decades I carried that sentence she gave me like a stone in my chest. You never became the man I imagined. It's funny, though. Life doesn't end when someone leaves you. It just keeps dragging you forward whether you're ready or not. I kept working, kept raising our boy Michael the best way I could, kept living in the same house where her perfume still lingered on the curtains for years. I thought maybe time would dull the pain, but some wounds don't heal, they just scar. And then last week, 40 years later, the phone rang. I don't get many calls these days, so when I picked it up, I expected a telemarketer or maybe a wrong number. Instead, I heard a trembling young woman's voice. "Mr. Hensley, you don't know me. My name's Emily. I'm Maggie's daughter, from her second marriage." My chest tightened instantly. Maggie. That name still stung like salt in an open wound. I'm sorry to call like this," Emily continued, her voice breaking, "but we need your help. Mom needs you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I closed my eyes and saw Maggie again in the kitchen, suitcase in hand, eyes cold as ice. The words came out before I could stop them. "Tell her," I said slowly, "that I'm still not the man she imagined." Silence filled the line. Emily didn't know what to say, and maybe that was for the best. Now, you might be wondering, why would a man who gave everything for love, who worked 3 jobs just to give his wife her dreams, turn away when she, or at least her family, finally came calling? That's the story I need to tell you. It isn't simple. It isn't clean. It's about love, sacrifice, betrayal, and the kind of scars you don't see on the outside. But before I tell you how that phone call changed everything, you need to know who I was back then, who Maggie was, who we were together, and why one Wednesday morning in 1983 still haunts me to this very day. My name's Thomas Hensley, but most people just call me Tom. I was born in 1940, in a small town in Ohio, where people didn't talk much about dreams. They talked about survival. My father, Robert Hensley, was a World War II veteran who believed a man's worth came from the sweat on his brow and the steadiness of his word. He was tough, sometimes too tough, but he never broke a promise. My mother, Evelyn, was the opposite. Soft-spoken, gentle, always finding a way to turn nothing into something. She could stretch a loaf of bread to feed 6 mouths, and she could calm my father with just a look. I grew up in a house where work was love. You showed you cared by showing up every day, no matter how tired you were. I carried that lesson with me into adulthood, for better or worse. I met Maggie when I was just 18. She was a year younger. with auburn hair that caught the sunlight like fire, and a laugh that filled every corner of the room. She wasn't like the girls from our town. While most were content with a quiet life, Maggie dreamed out loud. She wanted a big house, vacations at the beach, a car that turned heads, and dinners at restaurants where you had to wear a suit just to sit down. I fell for her fast. She was everything I wasn't. Bold, hungry for more, unafraid to say what she wanted. I thought maybe I could be the man who gave her all those things. Maybe I could build her the life she imagined. We married young, right after high school. I still remember my sister Sarah warning me, "Tom, don't lose yourself trying to keep her happy. Love isn't just about money." My brother John was more blunt. He said, "You're going to break your back for her dreams, and she'll still want more." But I didn't listen. I thought they didn't understand her the way I did. By the time I was 25, Maggie and I had our son, Michael. He was small, with my dark eyes and her fiery hair. I held him in the hospital and swore I'd give him the world. That promise, more than anything, drove me to work harder than I ever thought possible. To keep up with Maggie's dreams, I took 3 jobs. By day, I worked in a factory. Evenings, I did handyman work around town. And nights, I drove a delivery truck. I'd come home just before dawn, collapse into bed, and wake up a few hours later to do it all again. I missed a lot. School plays, little league games, family dinners. Michael used to wait up for me sometimes, sitting at the kitchen table with his homework spread out, just hoping I'd walk in early enough to help him. More often than not, I didn't. And when I did, I was too tired to think straight. He'd ask me questions and I'd mumble something, half asleep. I told myself he'd understand one day. Meanwhile, Maggie's world grew bigger. She had the car she wanted, the house with the picket fence, vacations where she took pictures in front of the ocean while I stayed behind to work an extra shift. She smiled in those photographs, standing in places I only dreamed of seeing. I thought she was happy. I thought that was enough. But here's the truth I didn't see back then. Love isn't built on things. It's built on presence, on being there, on choosing each other every day, not just with money, but with time, with attention, with your heart. And I gave her everything but that. By 1983, on the outside, I looked like a man who had done his job, provider, husband, father. But inside, I was hollowed out. I was always tired, always chasing the next paycheck, always hoping my sacrifices would one day be enough for her to look at me and say, "Tom, you are the man I imagined." That moment never came. Looking back now, I can see the signs. The way she looked out the window like she was somewhere else. The way she started dressing up more when she went out without me. The way conversations turned from we to me. I ignored it because I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. And so, when she finally stood in that kitchen on that Wednesday morning with her suitcase in hand, I was blindsided. Maybe I shouldn't have been. Maybe I should have known that no matter how many hours I worked, no matter how many dreams I bought for her, it would never fill the empty space where I was supposed to be. At that point in my life, before the day she left, I was a man who believed a sacrifice was enough to hold love together. I didn't know that sometimes sacrifice without presence can drive love apart. That's who I was back then. A man who worked himself to exhaustion, trying to give someone else the life they imagined, never realizing it meant I was losing the life I was supposed to live. It was a Wednesday morning in 1983 when Maggie decided to leave, but the truth is, she'd been leaving me in pieces for years. That suitcase she carried out the door wasn't just packed with clothes, it was packed with every unspoken word, every disappointment, every hollow glance I had ignored because I was too busy working to notice. I sat at the kitchen table that morning, still in my work boots, drinking cold coffee that had gone bitter overnight. When Maggie walked in, I thought she was heading out to run errands. Instead, she stopped in the doorway, suitcase in hand, and just stood there. Her silence was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. "Tom," she said finally. her voice sharper than the edge of a blade. "I can't do this anymore." I looked at her, confused, exhausted, not sure if I was still dreaming from the 3 hours of sleep I'd managed the night before. "Can't do what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. She set the suitcase down beside her and crossed her arms. This half-life we've been living. You never became the man I imagined. You work, you provide, yes, but you don't live. You don't see me. You don't see us." My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I wanted to defend myself, to tell her I had given her everything, every drop of sweat, every aching muscle, every hour I could sell to keep the roof over her head and the world at her feet. But when I opened my mouth, the only words that came out were, "I did all this for you." She shook her head slowly, like she pitied me. "You did it for the man you thought you had to be, not the man I needed." And then, just like that, she picked up her suitcase and walked out the front door. The slam echoed through the house, rattling the picture frames on the wall. One of them fell, a photo of us on our wedding day. The glass cracked right across her smile. I sat there, staring at that broken picture, unable to move. My entire body felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing me down. I don't know how long I sat before I heard the creak of the stairs. It was Michael. 15 years old, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at the suitcase-shaped emptiness where his mother had been, and then at me. "Where's Mom?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "She's gone, son." His face tightened, confusion turning into anger. "Gone where?" She left." My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. Fathers are supposed to be strong, unshakable, but in that moment I was nothing but a broken man trying to explain the unexplainable. Michael's fists clenched at his sides. "You're always gone, Dad. Working, working, working. And now Mom's gone too. Do you even see what you've done?" The words hit me harder than Maggie's ever could. I wanted to grab him, to tell him I had done it all for him as much as for her. But he was already storming back up the stairs, slamming his door so hard the whole house seemed to shake. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. Maggie's absence was a wound, but Michael's silence was the salt poured into it. I walked through the rooms, every corner filled with memories I could no longer hold on to. The kitchen where Maggie used to laugh. The living room where Michael used to fall asleep on my chest watching TV. All of it gone, like smoke slipping through my fingers. Over the weeks that followed, the reality sank in. Maggie remarried within a year. I heard through neighbors that her new husband was a businessman, polished and charming, the kind of man who took her on trips instead of sending her postcards. She seemed to get everything she wanted, everything I had worked for but could never truly give. Meanwhile, Michael pulled further away. He stopped waiting up for me, stopped asking for help with his homework, stopped talking to me about anything beyond what was absolutely necessary. I had given him stability, but not presence, and now he carried that emptiness the way I carried Maggie's rejection. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, Maggie's words replaying over and over, "You never became the man I imagined." The thing about words like that is they don't just describe who you were, they redefine who you think you are. I started questioning everything. Was I really a husband, a father, or just a provider, a machine built to work until there was nothing left of me? That question haunted me every day, and the more I tried to bury it in work, the more it gnawed at me. Maggie may have left with her suitcase, but she didn't just leave the house. She left her judgment etched into my bones. And no matter how many hours I worked, no matter how many years passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she was right. It was late on a Thursday afternoon when the phone rang. These days, most of the calls I get are from telemarketers or wrong numbers. My son Michael calls occasionally, though not as much as I wish he would. So when I picked up the phone and heard a young woman's trembling voice say, "Mr. Hensley?" I was caught off guard. "Yes, this is Tom," I answered cautiously. There was a pause on the other end, a shaky breath. "My name is Emily Parker. I don't know if you know who I am." Something in her voice pulled at me. Nervous, rehearsed, like she had been dreading this call all day. "I don't believe I do," I said slowly. "I'm Maggie's daughter, from her second marriage." The moment she said Maggie's name, my stomach tightened like a fist. That name still carried weight after all these years, heavy and sharp, like an old wound that never healed. I didn't say anything at first. Emily rushed to fill the silence. "I know this is strange, we've never met, but I didn't know who else to call. We need your help." Her words echoed in my head. "We need your help." 40 years ago, Maggie had walked out of my life and left me carrying the burden of her judgment. And now her daughter was calling me, asking for something I wasn't sure I had to give. I cleared my throat. "Why are you calling me, Emily?" She hesitated. "Because she still talks about you, even now. She needs someone she can trust. And she said once you were the most dependable man she ever knew." I almost laughed, bitterly. Dependable. That was the word Maggie had used when she wanted more hours, more shifts, more sacrifices. Dependable was what she called me before telling me I wasn't the man she imagined. I gripped the phone tighter, memories rushing back like a flood. I saw my father, Robert, standing in our old backyard, sweat dripping from his brow as he stacked wood. "A man's worth isn't in what he gets, Tom. It's in what he gives," he used to say. I had believed him. I built my entire life on that creed, and still it hadn't been enough. Then I heard my son Michael's voice, years later, bitter and raw. "You gave us money, Dad, but not yourself." Two voices from different times, both demanding something from me. One asking me to give, the other accusing me of giving the wrong things. Emily's voice broke through my thoughts. "Mr. Hensley, please. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important." My chest ached with conflicting emotions. Rage, sorrow, duty, longing. Part of me wanted to hang up the phone, to shut the door forever on anything tied to Maggie. After all, she had made her choice. She had turned her back on me. But another part of me, the part shaped by my father's words, couldn't ignore someone reaching out in need, especially not her daughter. I swallowed hard. "What exactly is it you're asking me for?" She hesitated again. "Can we meet? I'll explain everything in person." I should have said no. I should have told her I had nothing left to give, not to Maggie, not to anyone connected to her, but instead I found myself agreeing. "All right, where?" There was relief in her voice. "There's a diner on Route 7 just outside town tomorrow afternoon." "Tomorrow," I said flatly, though my heart was pounding. After I hung up, I sat there in silence, staring at the old photo albums on my shelf. Pictures of Maggie smiling in front of the beach house she had begged for, of Michael standing proudly with his Little League team while I was stuck at work. Pages of memories that looked happy from the outside but were filled with cracks only I could see. What was I doing, agreeing to meet her daughter? Was this a chance for closure, or just another chance to reopen the wound Maggie left behind? That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, staring into the darkness, my mind looping the same questions. What did she want from me now? Why, after all these years, was my name still on her lips? And most of all, was I about to finally prove Maggie wrong, or was I about to confirm, once again, that I was never the man she imagined? By morning, I had my answer, not in words but in action. I put on my old jacket, grabbed my truck keys, and told myself I'd find out what this was about, one way or another. The turning point had come, and whether I was ready or not, I was walking straight into it. The next day, I drove out to the diner on Route 7. It was the kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt toast, and the same waitress has been working there for 20 years. I parked my old Chevy out front and sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to turn the key, head home, and pretend the phone call never happened. But something kept me rooted in that seat. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was unfinished business. When I finally pushed open the diner door, I spotted her right away. Emily. She had Maggie's auburn hair and those sharp hazel eyes that could see right through you. But there was softness, too, something Maggie never carried. She looked nervous, fidgeting with a napkin as she sat in the booth by the window. "Mr. Hensley?" she asked, standing halfway as I approached. "Tom," I corrected gently. My voice sounded older than I remembered. We sat across from each other, the silence heavy until the waitress poured us both coffee. Emily stirred hers absent-mindedly, eyes fixed on the cup. Finally, she spoke. "Thank you for meeting me. I know this must be strange." "Strange is one word for it," I muttered. "Why don't you tell me why I'm here?" She looked up, her eyes glistening. "It's about Mom. She's not well. The doctors say it's serious. She doesn't have much time." Her words landed like a weight on my chest. Maggie, the woman who had walked out of my life with that cold stare, was dying. I clenched my jaw. "And what does that have to do with me?" Emily hesitated, then leaned forward. "Because she talks about you, Tom, even now. She says your name in her sleep. She told me once that leaving you was the biggest mistake she ever made." I froze, staring at her. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. "Mistake?" I repeated, my voice cracking with bitterness. She looked me in the eye and told me I was never the man she imagined. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? To our son?" Emily's face softened. "I know she hurt you. I can't excuse that. But I also know she regrets it. Her second marriage fell apart. Her husband left when things got hard. She's alone now, and she asked for you." I sat back, my hands trembling around the coffee mug. My whole life had been shaped by Maggie's rejection. Every decision, every sleepless night, every hollow hour at work, it all traced back to that moment she walked out. And now, after all these years, she wanted me again. I let out a bitter laugh. "You know what your mother once told me?" She said, "You never became the man I imagined." I spent decades carrying that sentence like a curse. Do you have any idea what it's like to break your back for someone, only to be told you were never enough? Emily's eyes filled with tears. Maybe she couldn't see it then. Maybe she was blind to what you gave, but she sees it now, Tom. She told me you were the only man who ever truly loved her, even if she didn't know how to love you back. Her words sliced through me. For years I had begged myself for some kind of closure, some recognition that my sacrifices hadn't been meaningless. And here it was, handed to me by the daughter of the woman who had broken me. I stared out the window at the highway, cars rushing past, each one carrying, people with their own burdens, their own regrets. I thought about my father's words, "A man's worth is in what he gives." I thought about Michael, my son, who had grown up resenting me for the time I didn't give him. I thought about Maggie, lying somewhere alone, maybe wishing she had chosen differently. Finally, I turned back to Emily. My voice was steady, though my heart was pounding. "Tell your mother this. I was always the man I was. Not the man she imagined, not the man she tried to shape me into, just me. And maybe that wasn't enough for her. But it's all I ever had to give." Emily wiped her eyes, nodding. "I'll tell her." I stood, dropping a few bills on the table for the coffee I barely touched. For a moment I considered asking Emily to take me to Maggie, to see her one last time, to say goodbye. But I stopped myself. Some doors once closed can't be opened again without shattering everything inside. As I walked out of the diner, the sunlight hit my face. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man chasing Maggie's approval. I felt like a man finally stepping out of her shadow. When I left the diner that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in decades. Not happy, not exactly free, but lighter. like I had finally set down a burden I didn't realize I was still carrying. Maggie's words had followed me through every step of my life. You never became the man I imagined. For 40 years, they were the measure I used against myself, the reason I believed I had failed as a husband, a father, a man. But hearing Emily say Maggie regretted leaving me, it was like those chains finally loosened. I didn't go to see her. Part of me wanted to, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. Seeing her lying there, frail and broken, wouldn't erase the pain of what she had done, and I didn't need to hear her apology with my own ears. I had already heard enough to understand. Maggie's judgment no longer defined me. Instead, I went home. The house was quiet, the same way it had been for years. I sat in my old recliner, staring at the family pictures on the shelf. One in particular caught my eye. Michael, at 16, standing in his baseball uniform, bat over his shoulder, looking like he was about to conquer the world. I remembered missing that game because of an extra shift. He'd hit a home run that day, and I wasn't there. My chest tightened. If Maggie's words had shaped me, Michael's silence had haunted me even more. And I realized, sitting there, that maybe it wasn't too late to try to heal that wound. That evening, I picked up the phone and dialed his number. It rang twice before he answered. "Dad?" His voice was cautious, like he wasn't sure why I was calling. "Yeah, it's me," I said, clearing my throat. "Listen, I was wondering if you'd like to come by this weekend. Maybe we could, I don't know, have dinner, just talk." There was a long pause. My heart sank, thinking he was about to say no. Then he sighed softly. "All right, a Saturday night." When I hung up, I felt a strange mix of nerves and hope. Michael and I had spent years circling around each other, both carrying our resentments in silence. But maybe now, with Maggie's ghost finally laid to rest, I could face my son the way I should have all along. As a father, not just a provider. Saturday came, and Michael showed up at the house with his wife, Claire, and their 2 kids. My grandkids ran through the rooms like little whirlwinds, filling the house with a laughter I hadn't heard in years. Watching them, I realized how much life I had missed, how much time had slipped away while I was busy proving myself to someone who had already left me behind. Later that night, after dinner, Michael and I sat on the porch. The air was cool, the sky dotted with stars. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, he turned to me. "Dad," he said quietly, "why did you work so much when I was a kid? Why didn't you just be there?" I took a deep breath, the weight of decades pressing down on me. Because I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought if I worked hard enough, gave your mother everything she wanted, it would keep us together. I didn't realize until too late that what she really wanted was me. And by the time I saw it, she was gone. And I had missed too much of you. Michael looked down at his hands, then back up at me. His eyes were softer than I expected. I was angry for a long time, but I get it now. I wish you'd been there. "I wish I had too," I said, my voice breaking. "But I'm here now, son, if you'll let me." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'll let you." The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, the kind of silence that feels like a new beginning. That night, after they left, I sat in the quiet house again. But it didn't feel empty anymore. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't haunted by Maggie's judgment or by the life I thought I'd failed to give. Instead, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Here's what I learned. You can spend your whole life trying to become the person someone else imagines. And in the process, you can lose yourself. Sacrifice without presence isn't love. It's a transaction. And love isn't built on transactions. It's built on time, on being there, on choosing each other even when it's inconvenient. Maggie never saw the man I was, but maybe my son and his children after him will. And that's enough for me. Because in the end, I don't need to be the man Maggie imagined. I just need to be the man I am. So that's my story. a story of love, sacrifice, loss, and learning what it really means to be enough. For years, I lived under the shadow of one sentence. You never became the man I imagined. It shaped me, broke me, and almost convinced me that my life had no worth. But now, after all, this time, I finally understand something. I was never meant to be the man someone else imagined. I was meant to be me, flawed, tired, imperfect, but still standing. And for the people who truly matter, that's enough. If you've ever carried someone else's judgment, if you've ever felt like your sacrifices went unseen or unappreciated, I want you to remember this. Your worth isn't measured by their imagination. It's measured by your heart, your choices, and the love you give in your own way. And if this story reached you, if it made you stop and think about your own life, about love, about family, about the weight we carry, then I'd like to ask you for one more thing. If you found meaning in this story, please give this video a like. If you've been through something similar, or if you have your own story to share, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you, and I know others would too. And if you want to hear more real stories that dive deep into what it means to live, lose, and grow, then subscribe to this channel so you won't miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. And remember, you don't have to be the man or woman someone else imagined. Just be you. That's more than enough.